Welcome to episode 34 in this chess puzzle adventure series starring Bobby Fischerman, Average Joe, and Peter Potzer. Previously, Average Joe and Peter Potzer were given the rowboat by the boys so that they could cross the Black Lagoon. As they set out on their journey, it wasn't long until they started to hear something under the water. And next thing they knew, a giant Kraken came up out of the water and said, "Where do you think you're going?" He said, "Oh, we're just crossing this lagoon to get to the dragon's lair." The Kraken said, "Well, that's fine with me, actually. I don't mind if you cross, but before you go, let's just try to see if you can solve a chess puzzle, just for fun." Average Joe and Peter Potzer looked at each other, and something just didn't seem quite right about that, but they didn't know what else to say, so they said, "Okay, sure. What's the puzzle?" And with that, the Kraken presented to them the following position. Here's the position that the Kraken presented to them. It's white to play and win the game. White's pawn is going forward like this. Black's pawns are going down the board in this direction. Before I say anything, if you would like to pause, how can white win this position? If you had a chance to look at that, let's talk about what's going on here. So first thing we need to understand is that the reason that this is a tricky position is because Black's pawns are so far advanced, and this one in particular is about to become a queen. And if you try the kind of obvious move of bringing the rook behind to try to stop it, well, then Black switches plans to push this pawn. And now you have a problem because you can't really stop both of them. Yes, you could take one, but then Black gets a queen over here. And once Black gets this queen, you're not going to be able to win from this position. And you have no other way to stop the pawns. Going back here, you would like to be able to maybe come down to the first rank and just cut off both of them, but you can't because the bishop is in the way. And you also have no checks on the king to kind of come around this way. So how do you stop the pawns if you're white? Well, the only way to win this position is to play the move rook to g7 check. And it might not be obvious, but this move is very cleverly setting up a mating net on the Black king. So Black has two options here. They can go king to c8 and they can go king to c6. Let's start with king to c8. If Black plays this move, how do you win the game from here? If you had a chance to look at that, the move is king to b6. And essentially what you're doing is cutting off the king from escaping this way and getting ready to deliver a checkmate or win one of Black's queens. So, for example, if Black were to play the move d1 queen, you have this really nice idea of throwing in the check, which forces the king out because you've taken away these two squares. And as soon as it steps here, notice how it's lined up with the queen. This allows you what's called a skewer in chess. You attack the high value piece, you force it out of the way. Notice it's defended by the bishop, and then you can simply take the queen. And now white wins. Okay, so that's kind of one idea. But if Black is smart, they're not going to get the queen right away. What they're going to do is play f2 and threaten to get a queen on both of these squares. And now if you're white, what's your follow-up here? You had a chance to look at that, there's actually a checkmate in 4 moves, and it starts with the move rook to c7 check. Notice how the bishop is cutting off this square. So Black has to go to b8, and now you can simply go back to d7, threatening the immediate checkmate. And the only thing that Black can do is delay the game by 1 move by getting a queen. You simply take it, and then next move, this is checkmate. It doesn't matter what Black does. They can't stop the checkmate because the bishop is controlling that square as well. Okay, so that's kind of the idea if, going back to the original position here, if the king goes to c8. However, if Black is smart, they're going to go to c6 because it gives them more options, and now you can't really checkmate them on the back rank like that. Okay, so king to c6. Now, what is the winning move here for white? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the only move in this position is bishop to f4. And like we kind of already talked about, you can't really stop these pawns. You have no way to do it with the way that your rook and your bishop are set up. So what you do instead is go for a different plan, a different approach. And notice how the king, again, is kind of not really having a lot of squares. If you look carefully, it can't move to too many places. And of course, the obvious move of getting a queen walks into the same trick that we've seen before. Check with the rook, forcing the king to go into the d file, and then bam, you have the skewer again, and you win the queen. All right, that's pretty cool, but Black is more clever than that. And instead of pushing the pawn and getting the queen, they simply play f2. And now they're threatening to get a queen here as well as here. So again, if you would like to pause, what's the move for white? If you had a chance to look at that, the only move here to win is e4. And it looks like a crazy move. Like, what are we doing? We have a rook, we have a bishop. Black's about to get a queen 2 different ways, and all we're going to do is push our pawn? Why would we do that? Here's why we would do that. Because rook to c7 check is almost checkmate. Look at this. There's only one place for the king to go to, right here. Everything else is controlled. Look at our king, look at the rook, look at the bishop, right? So this is the only square for the king. So when we play e4, we take that away. We are threatening checkmate. So if black gets queen, game is over. Checkmate. If black gets queen here, same thing. Game is over. Checkmate. So that's the point behind e4. All right, but of course, black is pretty smart, and they see that and they play king c5. And they give themselves a way to escape. So it's no longer checkmate. The king can now run away. And of course, black still has the double queen threat over here. So again, what do we do now? White to play and win. You had a chance to look at that. The move is bishop to e5, and it's the same idea of like the king is trying to escape, so we take away the escape square. And notice how the bishop and the pawn are controlling here. The king is controlling here, and again, we have the checkmate idea of bringing the rook over. So you can see if black gets a queen either way, same thing, like I just mentioned. Okay, so what does black do instead? Again, king to c4, trying to escape. And this time it looks like they're actually going to escape because they have a couple of options that doesn't look like we can stop. So what's the winning move here for white? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is rook to g3. And I said we can't stop it, but we actually can. Look at this. Cuts off the king from this direction now. And of course, it doesn't want to go back up this way because then it's still checkmated, right? Because our bishop and our pawn, like I mentioned, sorry, bishop and pawn and a king. Okay. So what can black do? Actually, there's nothing it can do. Any queen doesn't help. You still get checkmate. Same thing over here. And the only move that black could play, for those of you who are really paying attention, would be under promoting to a knight to control that square. The issue for black here is that white simply plays rook to f3, stops this pawn from becoming a queen. If the knight ever moves, you lose the pawn. You don't really have a great plan. You can't get your king over to help because it's cut off. And it's just a losing position for black. So essentially, the only way to win this position was not to really stop the pawns, but was to create a checkmating net for black using the bishop, the rook, and the pawn. It's amazing, right, that you can actually set this up. You have to play bishop f4, you have to play e4, bishop e5 to get this configuration here. Fascinating stuff, right? So congratulations if you saw that. Not an easy puzzle, but pretty cool to see the king trapped like that right in the middle of the board, really. Well, of course, Peter Potzer saw this and solved the puzzle correctly. And after they presented the solution to the Kraken began to get very angry. And the Kraken said, "Nobody ever solves my chess puzzles. I changed my mind about what I said. You need to go back where you came from before I destroy you." Peter Potzer and Average Joe promptly turned the boat around and went back to the shore where the boy was still waiting. He said, "Did you solve the Kraken's chess puzzle?" They said, "Yes, we did. You could have at least warned us." The boy said, "Well, if I did that, I wasn't sure that I would ever see my boat again. But what I can tell you is there's another way around the island. It's going to take you a little longer, but you can still get to the dragon's lair." He said, "You'll have to head south and go past the abandoned village, the ancient libraries, and then the endless desert. But eventually that'll take you to the Clay Canyon, and from there you can access the dragon's lair as well." Peter Potzer and Average Joe, not really seeing another option, started to head south, and that's where we'll pick up our story next time. Thanks for watching, and happy adventures on the chessboard.